Beside me there are two wolves. And I'm going to watch an American Ninja. It's inevitable. It turns out there was at least 4 plus an American Samurai, maybe, on that Letterboxd list. So it's going to happen. And I have nothing against what I will continue to call the VHS shelf, so to speak. You know, some of those direct-to-video movies, nothing against them. In fact, will delight in them, but we'll talk more about that later. But in realizing that I had maybe a preponderance of American Ninja movies, I decided to instead watch this week Millionaires Express. So I'm going to feed that wolf this week. Again, you know, I've got a lot of Sammo movies on my list as well, and this is another Sammo movie, but, you know, but nothing, actually. I've got no qualifying response. We're doing another Sammo movie this week. I will say for a second, though, I did think maybe we were on to something different here with this one. It opens up on kind of this grand, snowy landscape, which I come to find out was Russia, so think Russian tundra or something of the like. And Sammo comes upon, it looks like a battlefield of sorts, you know, so we're maybe in the middle of a war, you know, but everybody's dead. It just was something I wasn't expecting or used to, and I thought maybe signaled a bit of a change for what Sammo was doing at this point. What are we in, 85 still, right? 86, welcome to 1986. But I was wrong. It quickly turns into Sammo trying to loot the soldiers. He's captured. He is that rogue that I think we've seen in almost all of his movies so far. And that's not the only familiarity, really, with this. We've got another tonally sporadic Sammo movie here. Not to spoil things, but even if it's not my favorite, that doesn't mean it's not very good or worth watching. But it's another one of those whiplash ones where I got to really pay attention or kind of sit down and figure out or look at the Wikipedia to get some of my answers, honestly. This is another one where I would say read that first and then watch the movie. The setting is unique, though. It's probably, I'm going to show my, again, inexperience here with both the culture and just history in general, but it appears to be set in what looks like the American West by way of early 20th century China. So I don't know much about, you know, China's West, so they're East, obviously, but I don't know if that was just Sammo taking on another genre that was, you know, American, or if this is just how it was in this particular region of early 20th century China. So, but the whiplash is real. After he escapes Russia, actually, I don't know where he goes after that. There's a love scene that takes place somewhere, or a love story, I guess more appropriately. Just that he has a girl that I don't know if they'll ever be together, and there's some things keeping them apart. I think it's his roguish nature, but that's followed by a train robbery scheme, followed by a bank robbery scheme that definitely takes place in this town that is kind of central to the film, in that it's where Sammo comes from, and you get the feeling betrayed in some way previous, because once he returns, it's kind of this idea that he wants to finally repay the town for what he's done, even though it doesn't, I don't think, really explain what that might be. But that bank robbery scheme is set up by what is the town's security chief, so there's a betrayal going on there. And I probably shouldn't get too tied up in really any of that. It does early on result in Yuen Biao, who's in this movie, by the way, doing a fantastic backflip off I'm pretty sure just straight up 2-story building. There doesn't seem to be a lot of trickery going on there. I mean, he broke his leg in the process, not in the movie, like in real life. So chances are that stunt was real. But Yuen Biao isn't the only familiar face either. Check this out. That town chief / bank robber is played by Eric Tsang, from the Lucky Stars trilogy, actually. This is almost a Lucky Stars movie, honestly. In fact, if you are into any of those, I feel like you'll have a better handle on this. It's just got kind of that wacky nature to it. Richard Ng is in it as well. He plays, I think, the train captain. There is actually a train in this. Don't worry, it's not that off the wall. But at no part in the movie did I clue in to the fact that I knew he was on the train. I didn't know he was the train captain. Lam Ching-Ying is back. He was from Prodigal Son. Mang Hoi is actually in for a second as well. Plays one of the inmates. And I think that's it. Not in it a whole lot, but it was fun to see him pop up. It's always fun to see him pop up. Lau Kar-wing is back. Lau Kar-leung's brother, who I think we first took notice of in Warriors 2. I think I picked him out as obviously somebody that knew what he was doing. Xiao Ho is back from Disciples of the 36th Chamber most recently, but pretty much everything else we've seen as well. And Jimmy Wang Yu, the one-armed swordsman himself, is hanging around in this thing. And Dick Wei, obviously. I feel like that probably went without saying, but Dick Wei is in this as well. And as much as I love all of that, I'm so excited. Number one, that I'm recognizing a lot of these people, but number two, they're in it, period. It's just always fun. You know, the gang is back, essentially, for a Sammo movie. But I gotta admit, I'm most excited for the newest face in the bunch, Cynthia Rothrock. So she's not in it a whole lot. She's got a bit up front where she's, you know, one of the gang, one of the mountain bandits, I believe. A lot of things going on in this movie. And so she doesn't return until the end when those mountain bandits do show up, with also Richard Norton, by the way, who we'll talk about. Not so much this movie, but he will come back. Especially if we're going to continue to talk about Cynthia Rothrock. They were in a whole bunch of movies together. But Cynthia Rothrock is often referred to as the first Western female Hong Kong action movie star. In fact, it's still hard to believe that her actual first, I think even just movie, was Yes, Madam. Like, I'm not going to say she peaked early because she's got a lot of great stuff, but good gosh, Yes, Madam. Go watch any of her fights with Michelle Yeoh in Yes, Madam. Just hard to believe that was her very first. Millionaires Express was her third, so still pretty early on. But she had, no joke, torn her ACL already. I don't know if that's why she didn't show up in this movie as much. She's basically brought in as a ringer for one of Sammo's fights at the end. But for whatever reason, during training, broke her ACL. Didn't have time to get it fixed between this and Righting Wrongs, which was the movie she did after this. And by the time what she ended up doing was just switching sides. She reversed all the choreography, so she was working on her weak leg, if you could even consider her having one of those. And by the time she was done with the movies that were keeping her away from the doctor, she went to the doctor and said, okay, what can we do? And they said, nothing, because your hamstring and I think your quads have adapted to the point where you don't need your ACL and we can't find it. Or something like that. So just plain Superwoman. And I don't think we need to go into all the details with this particular movie, but Cynthia Rothrock is here, or will be later on, because at this point it's still Eric Tsang, the security chief, that's kind of betraying the town by lighting a building on fire so that they can rob the town bank while that's happening and then escape, which I believe they do successfully. But then it's at that point that Yuen Biao, who works for the police, is kind of thrust into a leadership position by a mayor who's fairly wishy-washy. And that's about when Sammo returns to the town in this bid to kind of repay them for something he did in the past or left them in the lurch in some way. It's a small town at the very least. So there is that, which, tracks with Westerns. It's that town out in the middle of nowhere that can easily be taken advantage of by, it's Bug's Life also to some extent. If you didn't know that was a Western, go check it out. But Eric Tsang successfully escapes with the money. Sammo comes into town at this point, and turns out his plan is to bomb the incoming train, the Millionaires Express, which is full of a lot of people with money, but also Richard Ang, like I mentioned, who has a mistress, and his bit is that it's actually one of the better bits. He leaves his train car with his wife to go to his mistress's train car by walking along the roof, but in so doing runs into a group, okay, I don't know I think it's just a group of gangsters kind of that have planned to steal a map to Qin Shi Huang's Emperor Qin Shi Huang's terracotta warriors, the map of which is being held by a group of Japanese, I don't know if they're straight up samurais, they have samurai swords or katanas. They are also on the train. So the bit that does make me laugh at this moment is that the gangsters tell one of theirs to go and spy on the Japanese, and in the meantime, he crosses paths with Richard Ang, who's going to his mistress's cabin on top of the train. So they like pass each other and kind of just wave at each other like, hey, good to see you. Or Richard Ang does, the gangster plays the straight man, and that like, why are we? But it's funny because it happens again later on the roof of, I think the Sammo comes to town and buys this. Are you seeing what I'm talking about? He buys this hotel, which he immediately fixes up. They kind of skip that part in the movie because his plan is to bomb the train so that it stops, or bomb the tracks so the train has to stop. So those rich people are forced to patronize his hotel so that it brings money into the town. Oh, also Wong Fei-hung is on the train, but like child Wong Fei-hung. So there's actually like at least 2 like child Wong Fei-hung fights that are actually kind of fun in the movie. That plan works, even though like 41 minutes in, Yuen Biao, who is now security chief, finds Sammo trying to execute this plan, and there is a fight between Sammo and Yuen Biao, which I believe is really it's definitely the first knockdown drag out in the movie. It's the first fight of any like actual significance in the way that I'd say, go look up this fight, or watch this entire movie for this and, the last 15 minutes of the film. Sammo kicks the crap out of Yuen Biao, like in the movie and in real life. Apparently, it's very, very apparent that Sammo was not at no point did somebody go to Sammo in 1986 yet and say, hey, you're really hurting us a lot, like really, for some of these shots. Somebody must have eventually said that to Sammo. It was not yet. And we've got another, just a lot of what, if I haven't mentioned it in a while, a lot of what makes these movies, especially the ones from the 80s, so iconic, but also just never going to happen again, is that they are really happening. And you'll hear, where did I see that? I saw some interviews with Mang Hoi, I think possibly for Righting Wrongs, when I watched that the first time, where he basically says, we get it, like, you shouldn't do that anymore. You shouldn't actually hurt people while filming for some reasons. But in 1986, and a bit before and after, they didn't have those reasons yet necessarily, or didn't, listen to them. So this is one where Sammo is very much kicking the crap out of people and does it to Yuen Biao in this fight 41 minutes in to the movie. So go look it up. And Yuen Biao, I hope you're doing okay. Did he have a broken leg already too by that point? I guess I don't know, but he got the very least wind knocked out of him by Sammo to the point where like somebody had to come like help him start breathing again, I guess is how it went. But the bomb works. The rich people patronize the hotel, which brings in some money, and I don't know if I'm skipping over a whole lot or it's just that not much happens besides some more bits, comedic bits, until like about the last 15 minutes of this movie, which is pure insanity, worth the price of admission, all comes together. Actually, there is one other bit. So when the bomb goes off and the train stops, like literally everything comes together in the way that like all of these disparate bits with Richard Ng cheating on his wife, and the Japanese, and the gangsters in the train, and Yuen Biao, and the inmates that have escaped. Like, when that bomb goes off, like, we cut to bits of every one of their scenes and how that bomb affects it, and it kind of brings the whole movie together in a bit. So that kind of works in a kind of satisfying way, especially if up until that point you're just looking for something to grasp onto. It kind of works in that moment. And then the last 15 minutes of the movie are just bonkers great. Everything kind of comes together again in that way, in the way that Sammo can manage chaos like possibly no director can. I'm trying to think, actually, yeah. What would be another director, sound off in the comments, that can handle cinematic chaos like Sammo can? I don't know. But he does it in the last 15 minutes of this movie, and if in that last 15 minutes you're hoping that the fight between him and Cynthia Rothrock pays off, it really, really does. Sammo is doubled in a few of those moments during that fight. It's always fun to figure out why. Maybe it's the guy that Cynthia Rothrock knocked out cold. Maybe that's why he came in to pinch hit for Sammo. It's a really great fight either way. Like, Cynthia really does bring it. It's a wonder to watch her work. And even this early on in her career, she really does a fantastic job. So go look that up. But again, the last 15 minutes is real great in this. And if you're kind of over the tonal whiplash that comes with the Sammo movie sometimes, it's still worth watching. I don't know. You get used to it certainly over time, but if you need to go to YouTube to look up the fight scenes, I guess I get it. You know, not everybody has a list of, I think, still over 100 movies that I've got to get through. So why don't we move on to the next as quickly as possible? Go watch Millionaires Express. Next week, possibly go watch, oh, this is an interesting one, actually. In fact, I'm going to cut right here because this is actually a fairly recent addition to the list. Not too long ago, I spoke with a great friend of the show, Mitch, about 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. In fact, hopefully he's coming back soon because he's finished his run. I move very slowly. I apologize. Obviously, we're on movie, I think, still just 20-something. But, you know, I'm still really new at this. You know, I'm still learning as I go with every single one of these movies. And when we talked about 8 Diagram Pole Fighter and we talked a little bit about some of his favorite movies, I've been lucky enough he introduced me to other YouTube channels and people that he's been conversing with over the months, years, I don't know. And one of those was The Obsessive Goes to China, Paul Thomas on YouTube. And he did an episode about his top 10, which I believe was elicited by Mitch as well to some extent. So in that, he put Martial Arts of Shaolin at the top of his list, which was one I hadn't even heard of up until that point. And I have a really hard time not putting somebody's number one movie on my list somewhere. And number one can mean a lot of things, obviously. Go actually watch that video. I'll link it down in the description as well. But that's quite possibly what's going on next time with cinematic. It's either that or, and I love it when this type of choice comes up, No Retreat, No Surrender, which, yeah, I don't think I have any of the other No Retreat, No Surrenders on the list, which one might be enough depending. So come back next week, next time, in fact, let's say, for what could possibly be Martial Arts of Shaolin or No Retreat, No Surrender. Until then, come find me on patreon.com/Ryan_runs_ or find that PayPal button nearby somewhere where you can do a one-time donation if that's more like your style. It all helps. It all really, really helps. Thank you 1 million times to these folks.